Let's talk about dialogue. Dialogue is at the core of dramatic writing. Dialogue can move the plot along. With dialogue, we can reveal information about character, about setting, about situation. So it's very important to know how to write dynamic dialogue. So, what are some principles we should keep in mind? I'm going to suggest 5 principles of what makes dialogue strong. And we'll talk about each of these in turn. Number 1, believable, though not necessarily natural. And what do I mean by that? Dialogue should be believable, meaning it should sound like how real people speak, but not exactly how real people speak. If you've ever had the chance to listen, maybe to the way that you speak, as I can after I record these videos, I notice I do a lot of right? I do a lot of pausing and searching for words. We often do that. There I go again, right? We repeat ourselves a lot. We go off on tangents. We'll be talking about one thing, it'll, spark a memory, and we'll talk about something completely different. If you ever have the chance to, it can be an interesting exercise to kind of eavesdrop, and not in a creepy way, but if you're walking around and you happen to pass people who are having a conversation, take a moment to just listen to the rhythms of the way that they speak, and you'll probably notice these things. So that is how we naturally really speak in real life. But in a play, in a film, we don't have room for all that. We don't have time to have characters be searching for words the way that we do in real life. Not in a full-length play or film, and certainly not in a short play or film, where you may only have 10 pages of dialogue to move the whole story. So that's what I mean by not having characters speak exactly in a natural way. It's going to be in a more deliberate way. Every line of dialogue that you put in your script needs to be there for a purpose. Okay? This is a quote I like from a playwriting text by Bernard Grabonier. Far more important than giving a character the words he would use in life is giving him and every other person of the drama the rhythms of speech used in life. So the way I interpret this is, again, not necessarily the exact words that somebody would say, but the underlying rhythm, the type of speech should feel believable. Motivated by character wants. So this is another way that dialogue in a script is not necessarily going to be exactly like dialogue in real life. In real life, sometimes we talk for no reason. Sometimes we talk just to fill the silence. Again, there's not room for that in a script. So every line needs to be in some way motivated by what the characters want, by character objectives. Often when we want something, the first thing that we will do to try to get it is we will speak. We'll use our words. If that fails, we might resort to something else like actions. But when characters are speaking, it's because they want something. Maybe they want to form a connection with another character. Maybe they want to get information out of another character. Maybe they want to prove something about themselves to another character. They have to want something, or they wouldn't be speaking. I'd like to show you a clip from the play Night Mother by Marcia Norman. And I think this play is a really good example of dialogue that is motivated by character wants. And it's also a very good example of shifting tactics, right? So as characters pursue their objectives, as they come up against obstacles, they change tactic. And in this case, you'll see the characters, particularly the mother character, changing tactics. To set the stage a little bit, there are 2 characters in the play. There is Mama, and then there is her daughter, Jessie. And Jessie has decided and has announced to her mother that she plans to take her own life. And Mother is trying to do everything she can to talk Jessie out of it. So content warning here, there is some discussion of suicide. If that is something that is emotionally difficult for you, you can feel free to skip over this part of the video.
You're not having a good time. Whoever promised you a good time? You think I've had a good time?
I think you're pretty happy. Yeah, you have stuff you like to do.
Like what?
Like crochet.
I'll teach you to crochet!
I can't do any of that nice work, Mama.
Good times don't come looking for you, Jessie. You could work some puzzles, or put in a garden, or go to the store. Let's call a taxi and go to the A&P.
I shopped you up for about 2 weeks already. You're not going to need toilet paper till Thanksgiving.
Jessie! You're acting like some little brat. You're mad and everybody's boring and you don't have anything to do. And you don't like me, and you don't like going out, and you don't like staying in, and you never talk on the phone, and you don't watch TV. And you're miserable, and it's your own sweet fault.
And it's time I did something about it.
Not something like killing yourself. Something like buying us all new dishes. I like that. Or maybe the doctor will let you get a driver's license now. Or, I know what let's do right this minute. Let's rearrange the furniture.
I'll do that if you want. I always thought if the TV were somewhere else, you wouldn't get such a glare on it during the day. I'll do whatever you want before I go.
So we'll stop it there. Notice there, every time the characters spoke, it was connected to their central want, right? Mama wants to convince Jessie not to do it. Jessie responds with an argument why she is still going to do it. And there were some shifts of tactics, right? So Mama started by saying, why don't you learn to crochet, do something that you enjoy. That didn't work. So she switched to another tactic, blaming, right? Saying you're acting like a brat, that you're being selfish. That didn't work, right? So she shifts again. Number 3. Minimizes exposition. Exposition means delivering information. And one of the most common things that I see beginning dramatic writers do is put too much exposition into their dialogue, to the point where it doesn't feel like what people would believably talk about. It feels like it's information intended for the benefit of the audience. Here's an example. Let's say we have 2 characters, Anne and Sam. Anne says, "As you know, Sam, we've lived in this house for 15 years. That's right, Anne. Both of our children were born here. Sure are a lot of memories. Remember when that tree fell over in the windstorm and broke right through our living room ceiling? Yes, that cost a lot to repair." So this is what I mean by exposition-heavy dialogue. These 2 characters already know how long they've been living in the house. It doesn't sound believable that they would be talking about it with each other. It sounds like the playwright or the screenwriter here is intending to give this information to the audience. And as a result, it takes me out. It's just not believable. If you, I would say in general, avoid the phrase "as you know," because what follows is often exposition, as well as remember when. Make sure your characters have a reason for bringing this information up. So how do we get information to the audience in a way that still sounds believable? What I would suggest is try to tie it to a conflict. So give the characters some reason to be bringing up this information. And this brings us to a mini writing exercise. So take this exchange here that is too exposition heavy and try to rewrite it so that it sounds more believable. Try to do this by thinking about, what do these characters want in the present moment? What are they in conflict about? And how can you tie the information we learn here into that conflict so that they have a reason to be bringing it up? Pause the video Give yourself as much time as you need here. And when you're ready, unpause it and I will show you an example of how I might rewrite this. So here's an example of a possible way to rewrite this. Anne, I just don't understand why you want to move now. Sam, this neighborhood is all the kids have ever known. Don't you want to broaden their horizons? But 15 years of memories, it's a lot to give up. Good ones, bad ones, heck, even that tree. We won't be giving them up. Memories last. That's what they're for. Plus, the dent that tree left in our savings account will last a lifetime. All right. Only one possible way to rewrite this. But notice what I've done here is I've tied all this information into a conflict. Anne doesn't want to move, Sam does. So they're bringing up these pieces of information as tactics to help convince the other of their objective. How about subtext? So subtext is the hidden meaning underneath a line of dialogue. We often don't say exactly what we mean in dialogue with each other. We often hide our true intentions, sometimes because we don't want to offend the other person. Sometimes we don't want to start a conflict for whatever reason. Sometimes we don't say what we actually mean. And when you have characters that are saying exactly what they mean, it can sometimes feel a little bit unnatural. What we say is on the nose. It feels too obvious. Okay. So here's an example. Let's say we have Anne and her daughter Lynn. Anne places a bowl of oatmeal with raisins arranged in a smiley face in front of her daughter Lynn. Lynn says, Mom, you know I don't like smiley face raisins on top of my oatmeal anymore. It makes me feel like a baby. I'm 15. I wish you'd start treating me like a teenager. So Lynn is saying exactly how she feels. Now, there are times that people do come out with exactly how they feel. During moments of intense conflict, sometimes people drop the subtext and they come out with exactly how they feel. And that can be very, very powerful when they do that. But at other times, we just don't tend to talk that way. So how might we rewrite this to sound a little bit more natural? Give it some subtext. Here's a possibility. Same thing happens. Lynn says, wow, thanks for the oatmeal, Mom. I especially love the smiley face you made with raisins. Great way to start the day before I head off to high school. So now she's using a bit of sarcasm, right? And underneath that sarcasm, the subtext is that she's feeling upset and she's feeling treated like a baby. But it's just a little bit more subtle, right? We could even go even more subtle. A smiley face with raisins, just like when I was 6. You sure know what I like, Mom. So this is even more subtle. And to get the subtext here, you might need to know more about Lynn. Or it might be in the delivery by the actor, right? But here she's not coming out with exactly how she feels. Maybe she doesn't want to offend her mother, but she's hinting at it that she's not happy with these raisins. And then finally, distinct among characters. So give your characters unique voices. Another of the most common things that I see in early drafts of plays is that the characters all sound basically the same. They use the same kinds of vocabulary, the same rhythms to their speech. They sound basically interchangeable. And part of developing believable and interesting characters is giving them distinct voices. So think about how your character's background and personality might influence the way that they speak. Teenagers are going to speak very differently, use very different vocabulary compared to, say, people in their 50s. The geographical region where somebody grew up is going to affect the way that they speak. For example, here in California, most people call a can of Coke, a soda. Where my mother grew up in the Midwest, it was called a pop. And so I grew up after my mother saying pop and noticed that my friends said soda. So the same thing can be called different things depending on where somebody grew up. Think so, and other things. Think about the character's educational background. Think about their job or career. Think about how these things might influence the way that they speak, the kinds of metaphors that they use, etc. Also, think about the character's personality. So, a character who is very quiet and introverted is probably going to have a different way of speaking than a character who is very bubbly and very extroverted. Here's a couple of examples. Let's say we wanted to make our character Lynn sound like a teenager. And maybe we'd make her say something like, speaking in this way, right? Mom, you are totally extra. Plus, am I like 5? Okay, a distinct way of speaking. As opposed to, let's say Lynn is a very intellectual, very precocious child. She might speak differently. Mother, I notice you have a habit of arranging raisins into a smiley face on top of my oatmeal. I can understand it as a gesture of maternal affection, perhaps an effort to hold on as long as possible to the memory of me as a child. Honestly, though. All right, that gives Lynn a very different feel from the Lynn that we had before. Also, even within the same character, rhythms and patterns of speech can change based on the character's emotional state. If a character is, for example, angry or upset, maybe they'll speak in short bursts. If a character, becomes maybe more and more worked up, maybe they start speaking in run-on sentences. So think about how a character's emotional state in any given scene also influences the way that they speak. Here's an example. Let's say Lynn is in a hurry and she's got to get out the door. Raisins, nice. Like when I was 6, shovels oatmeal into her mouth. See ya, Mom. Okay, so she's speaking in short, concise little bursts because she's in a hurry. All right, the last thing I want to talk about in this lecture is a very distinct form of dialogue writing, the monologue. Monologues often happen at moments of heightened emotion or moments that are crucial turning points where a character is trying to make a decision. What should we keep in mind when writing monologues? The speaker should have a want. So just like with any other form of dialogue, monologues should be delivered for a reason. Maybe the speaker is trying to convince somebody of something. Maybe it's themselves they're trying to convince. Maybe they're trying to make up their mind. The famous to be or not to be monologue in Hamlet. That's him trying to make up his mind. Should I kill myself? Should I not? The monologue should be delivered to someone, even if it's to the self, right? Hamlet's monologue he's talking to himself. You can have a monologue with a character speaking to another character. You can have a monologue with the character speaking to themselves. That's called a soliloquy. But in any case, it should be delivered to someone. And that ties into this idea of a want. And just like a short scene, it's helpful to think of a monologue as having a beginning, a middle, and an end. Avoid a monologue that's just exposition. There's nothing that bogs down a scene more than a character dumping information for no real reason. So make sure the monologue's being delivered for a reason, and it has the arc of almost like a mini play or a mini scene. You want to start and end the monologue strong. It's a fact from psychology that people tend to remember, if given a list, people tend to remember the beginning and the end better than what's in the middle. So that means you want to start the monologue off in an engaging way, and then you want to end it really strong as well, because that's what's going to stick in people's minds. I gave you a reading today. It's a monologue from one of my favorite plays. This is by Rajiv Joseph, who also wrote Animals Out of Paper. This play is called Bengal Tiger at the Baghdad Zoo. It's a really fascinating play. The character here, and he was played by Robin Williams on Broadway. The character is the ghost of a tiger. So it's kind of an unusual character. At the beginning of this play, this is set in Baghdad when during the 2003 Iraq War. And so Baghdad has been bombed. This tiger character in the beginning of the play is killed, but he comes back as a ghost, and he spends the rest of the play wandering through bombed out Baghdad, delivering monologues. Well, I wasn't able to find a clip of the exact monologue that I have you read. I found this one, which should give you a sense of what this tiger character is like.
All my life, I've been plagued, as most tigers are, by this existential quandary. Why am I here? And now that I'm dead, I'm a ghost. It's why aren't I gone? I figured everything just ended. You know, the Leos ended. The suicidal polar bear, dust and bones. It's alarming, this life after death. The fact is, tigers are atheists. All of us, unabashed. When an atheist suddenly finds himself walking around after death, he's got some serious reevaluating to do.
So as you read this monologue, think about, what does the tiger want? And I think his want becomes clear by the end of the monologue, even if it's not necessarily clear in the very beginning. By the end, it becomes clear also, who is this monologue being delivered to? So think about that as well. And then think about the ending. So we don't have in a monologue, you don't necessarily need to have a resolution in the end like you would with a full play. But what you want to have is some kind of a turn. It could be an escalation of the conflict. It could be a character coming to a decision in the end. It could be something else in the character that changes. So what happens in the end of this tiger monologue that we might consider an escalation of conflict or a turn? All right, so those are some principles of strong dialogue. Please keep those in mind as you are crafting your scenes, and I'll see you at the next lecture.